We're live. What's up, friends? Let me grab this YouTube link and then we can get started. This is Office Hours, February 13th. Happy Valentine's Day tomorrow for those of you who are excited about that. Office Hours is a fun opportunity for you to ask me any question that you so desire, and I will do my best to answer. Provided that the question itself doesn't break the code of conduct, which we haven't had that problem yet, but I keep saying that just to make sure we don't. So yeah, we just hang out for an hour. I answer people's questions who are on the Zoom call first. And so if you want that link, then you can get it right here. And then if we run out of questions in the Zoom call, then I go to Discord. So I totally ignore the live chat on YouTube. Feel free to jump over to Discord if you want to ask questions. And we do have a handful of these for this week. So yeah, but anybody have questions in the Zoom call right now to get us going? Okay, cool. Then feel free to interrupt me. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Harsh.
Yeah, thanks for noticing my unmuting my mic. Yeah, I had a question because I was doing this last week. A/B testing in React applications. There's several packages, several systems. Do you have a preferred method? Have you done it?
Yeah, I've done it. At PayPal, we did actually like A, B, C, D, E, F, G testing on, I can actually show you here. I'm gonna bring this over here so I can log in without worrying about reviewing the length of my password at the very least. Whoops. That's not gonna work. Whoops. Typing in my 1Password password, and it is a very, very, very long password. Okay, here we go. We are over on the send and request page. So come over here. This page right here, we had like 12 variants of this page because this was like the entry into our app when I was at PayPal. I built this. This is downshift actually. All of that is downshift. That was one of the several autocomplete or like combo box components that we had. We also have on the, yeah, it looks like they changed things around a little bit because, oh, yeah, that's taking me over to Zoom now. That's weird. Yeah, so PayPal bought Zoom while I was at PayPal. You got to be kidding. Boo. I didn't build that. Man, there was another, I want to be able to send money to somebody who lives somewhere else. Oh well. There was another entry where you'd say, I want to send money to someone else in the world or in a different place. And so there was like a combo box for where they are located. But I guess it makes more sense to not do it that way. You just say, I want to send it to a person. I don't care where they are. Anyway, so yes, we did it here. Lots of variations on mostly the design. And the way that we did it is PayPal had its own feature flag sort of thing. And we just used, built our own little library around that. And so the feature flags would get loaded. Here, I don't want to like reveal any of my own personal stuff, so I'm going to pull this over here. But let me see if I can find. Yeah. Okay, so I think if I go to what was it called? No, that's not going to be it either. Well, yeah, I don't want to reveal anything, but if you go to this page and you open up the like view source, then somewhere in here you're going to find a giant JSON object that was like server rendered that says features, and it shows you all the different features that you have enabled. And so we would key off of that global features thing. Man, I think it was called server props. Hold on. Window server props. Is that what we call it? Dang it. Oh well. Yeah, so we just key off of that to determine which things we show. And then we just record analytics like crazy on all sorts of interactions and things. And then that would feed into our backend system where the product folks would like measure things and do all that. That was outside of what I did. So yeah, we didn't really use any packages or anything. So I can't tell you which one is a good one or anything like that. We just went with our own, like built our own stuff. And yeah, I didn't really build any of the abstractions. I may have built some of the client side stuff for whether to render this thing or that thing based on a feature. I feel like I did something with that, but I don't have much more to add about that. So yeah, I just took like 10 minutes of your life and I didn't really offer too much. Sorry.
No, I mean, yeah, thanks. It's fine. I was just kind of curious because there's like you could do in-house, which is also fine, but there's also packages which also work, and there's services, and it's yeah, it was kind of, but
Yeah, like if you're not a big company that can dedicate a team to um yeah, to maintaining like those analytics and the like deciding which whether it's A or B and whatever, then I would probably opt for a service, because it's not just the client side of saying, should you see this or should you see that? And you have to keep in mind that like you don't want to load both of those, so you have to do some lazy loading too, which is kind of separate from what I'm about to say. But yeah, if that's not your core competency and you're trying to move fast, then probably opt for using a service, at least for the backend piece. And I'm guessing most of these services have a client library that helps you with some of this stuff.
yeah.
One, actually, you know what? I have talked with somebody on my podcast, not exactly about this. She does testing and production. She likes talking about that a lot, but she works for a company called Split, I think. Yeah, and they have this feature flags thing that you could try out. That I like. They're not paying me to say this, and I have never used it. But she's a very intelligent person and works at this company and seems to really like it. So this would be, if I were to go try out a service, this would probably be the first one I would try. So with that, I will paste a link, and yeah.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for the recommendation. I'll give it I'll check it out. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely worth a look anyway. Cool. Anyone else here?
Hi, Kent.
Hi.
So yesterday I was just playing around with WebRTC and React hooks, and I landed into a typical problem where I mean, since WebRTC old architecture is still very much based on callbacks, and I was using use state, so I was eventually landed into a problem where closures were not giving me the proper state values, React state values.
Okay.
And then what I did was I just copied all those state values to ref and then used them into callbacks, or use the deferred use state, pass the function to the use state, set state functions. So what is the ideal way we should go here? I just wanted to know about that.
Well, it's really hard for me to say without seeing code.
I can, unfortunately, I have undone that code. I can share it over Discord maybe sometime soon.
Yeah. And go ahead and share it in like the React channel. And if you're not able to get the help that you need in there, then you can bring it back to Office Hours next week.
Sure.
But yeah, it sounds like it's not exactly related to WebSockets or anything. And it sounds like there's a stale closure there, or something like that. So yeah, it's hard to say without seeing something.
Okay. Cool. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Good luck. Anyone else here have a question before I go over to Discord? Okay, sweet. I noticed somebody unmuted, but I can't hear them. So I'm going to proceed. over to Discord. Okay. Here we go. Michael is asking, oh, yes. I remember seeing this comment, but I never looked at the code sandbox, so we can look at this together. They're just talking about my authentication in React applications blog post, and found a caveat. An anonymous user clicks the button that runs a function. Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, okay, let me see what the specific issue is here. I'll bump this font size up a little bit. Okay, so here's our app. We're rendering a provider and a child. Let's take a look at this provider. Oh, here, there's some comments. Let's take a look at what that says. When a user clicks a button that calls an authenticated action, the app logs him in after filling an email and password, and then runs the action. I see. So let's make up a use case for this. Let's say that you're an unauthorized user on Egghead.io, like you haven't authenticated, and so then you land on a video page and you hit play, and instead of actually playing, you want them to go log in first, and then they come back and we play. So that would be an example of what they're trying to accomplish here. So yeah, depending on the way that you end up implementing this, like a lot of it depends on the user experience. For Egghead.io, they'd probably redirect you to the login screen, and then when you when you do that, it's going to store where you're supposed to go back, like after login, either in the URL or maybe in session or some maybe even local storage or session storage or something, in a cookie, wherever. It's going to be stored somewhere. And then once they finish logging in, then your normal authentication flow is going to go check and say, did you say that you wanted to go somewhere specific? If you didn't, then I'll just take you to the home page. But if you did, then I'll send you back to there. And if you wanted it to autoplay or something, then you could say, I want to go back to this page, and here's a query param that says autoplay or something like that. So that would be one way to accomplish that. But if you want to be able to not navigate to a different page or any of that, and just stay on this page, then you just pop open a modal or something and do that login. But it sounds like the problem is because the user authentication state is stored in context higher up in the app. Well, yeah, okay. Let me just see what they're doing here. So if we run the authenticated action, pretend login, and we get some sort of full re-render. So let's see what happens when we do that. Toggle auth. Okay. So when I click this toggle auth thing, what is that doing? Okay, so there's a timeout. Set reset. Huh. Well, I mean, I'm kind of confused by this example, honestly. Yeah, like I can see that it's pretty contrived where you're saying, hey, like there's some sort of the app reloads. Okay, so when you say the app reloads, then my question is like, is this a full page refresh or is it some sort of contrived thing where you render null? I mean, this is sort of like what I'm doing in the blog post a little bit, and maybe that's what you're trying to set this to be something like what I was doing, sort of. So what I do is while we're getting the user's information on the initial page load, we're going to render a full page spinner. Now, of course, you wouldn't do this in a server-side context. This would just be a client-side thing. If you're server rendering, then you don't need to bother with this because you know if the user's logged in. Yeah, so I mean, I don't think that we would have this problem if you didn't do the reset thing. And so I'm not entirely certain why this is happening. If it's a full page reload, then there's literally nothing you can do about it without having to persist your intended action somewhere. And then when the page loads, you're going to pull out the user's info, or like the user's intended action, and then evaluate whatever that's going to be. I just noticed there's a bunch of chat going on in Zoom. Please do not chat in Zoom. Nobody can see it in Discord. They can't see it in the live stream. Keep chat in Discord, please. It is, yeah, it's better for history and everything else. So if any of these things are pertinent to other people, then please do it in Discord. I'm not going to read the Zoom chat. Okay, so yeah, I'm not sure what to tell you. This is pretty contrived. Let me think. Yeah, I don't know. It's too contrived for me to really give you a recommendation. For me, let me just think about like what I would do, or what my first thought of what I would do is I would say, okay, they're going to do this action. We'll just render a modal. We'll store that action, like, and you have your guard thing. So that's sort of what this guard would be responsible for setting some state, and the state it would set is like, or like it would call some function that says, okay, render this modal. And when you render that modal, you'd say, here's the callback I want you to call when you have success. Yeah, and then when you're finished logging in, then we call that callback. So yeah, it's this piece that I'm not sure I understand why that exists. I'm sure that there's a reason, but I can't really explain my workaround without seeing what like the actual purpose for that being in there. And yeah, so who is it that asked this? Michael, yeah. So Michael, if you're watching this now or something, you can feel free to interrupt me at any point and kind of clarify any of those unanswered questions. But anyway, hopefully something that I said there was at least a little bit useful. This is why it's really good for you to just be here. I understand that not everybody can make it, but yeah, sometimes I can't get, yeah, I can't quite understand without you being here and clarifying stuff. Okay, Ghosty is asking, oh yeah. So asking about, I pop up the Alfred window, type a few characters, and get a list of VS Code icons mapped to snippets. So yeah, I'm still not sure I know what they're referring to, but I do have snippets in here. Yeah, these things that you see right there are not VS Code snippets or anything. These are actually, this is my clipboard. So Alfred has like a clipboard history, and I can search through my clipboard forever, like for the last month or something, of everything that I've copied to my clipboard, which is amazing. And that's what you're seeing when I do that. I do have like in addition to clipboard stuff, I have snippets in here. So like PPP, purchase power parity, where I explain, hey, check where, we support PPP, or like Twitter, there's a quick tweet, and there's a keyword for some of these things too, where I do a, here, I'll just show you, semicolon TWIT. Oh, it doesn't work in Discord because Discord does other things. There we go. And it will like pre-fill. PPP is the same thing. So yeah, I just use Alfred for that. But that, yeah, it has nothing to do with VS Code. The icon just means that's where I copied it from. So if I go here and I copy this, now you're going to see a Discord icon because that's the app that I copied it from. Yeah, Alfred is the bomb. I use it a ton. It's fantastic. Okay, hopefully that answers your question. Oh, yeah. So David asked about using emotion specifically. Yeah, emotion with Create React App. So in the Bookshelf app, I actually do this. I use, this is a Create React app. All the versions are the latest except for emotion, because I don't think that they have a good way to do this right now. But the latest version of Create React app messes things up a little bit because the new JSX transform. And so I have to disable it in my .env file here. So that's how that works. I just disabled a new JSX transform. In a future iteration of the Bookshelf app, I'm actually going to be dropping emotion in favor of Tailwind. I was like this close to using Tailwind, and then finally decided, you know what, I've built so many apps with emotion and it's worked super awesome. Tailwind is relatively new. I'm not sure I'm ready to recommend it, but now I am. And I'm ready to recommend it over emotion. So that is what we're going to be doing when I update the Bookshelf
over
app.
emotion.
Yeah.
Over emotion. Yeah. Oh, exciting.
Yeah. And that's
so
not to say.
I believe you have tried it already. Or...
Yes. Well, so no, I tried it when I was making the Bookshelf app in the first place, and it worked pretty well. There were a couple of things that I didn't really like, and it was pretty immature at the time. But yeah, it's good. Tailwind is awesome. Emotion's awesome too. I think there's really like I guess I don't know what to say. It's you can't make a wrong choice here. But I think Tailwind is we're better off with Tailwind.
You mentioned before, I think, I don't remember when, but you mentioned once that emotion scaled well at PayPal. I cannot remember which course or when I heard you say it. I could be wrong, but I think I heard you say it once. That
you say what? Sorry?
Emotion scaled well at PayPal.
Yes. Yeah, it does. The really nice thing about emotion is that because, or just CSS in general, is that when you don't need CSS, you delete it just like you do with anything else, and you don't worry about what impact that's going to have on the rest of the app. And so, and there's like built-in code splitting as well, because you're literally just code splitting like you do anything else. And Tailwind, you don't quite get that. Like, I'm sure there are people doing experiments on different things that you can do to code split Tailwind a little bit. They probably don't work super well, to be honest. But I mean, I don't know. People are really amazing at what they can do. But yeah, so I probably wouldn't worry about that. The thing is that like right here where it's saying, hey, we just remove everything you don't use, it does end up not being a ton of CSS, because just like there's only so much of those utility classes you're going to use. So you'll still end up, you won't end up with less, like emotion will always be less CSS than Tailwind, just because you can code split it. But it won't be such a big difference that it is super relevant. And the nice thing about Tailwind too is that you can just load all of the CSS that your app will ever use, and then you never need to load anything else. And so that can be cached forever, or like until you deploy next. So yeah, so that's kind of a nice thing about Tailwind. It's all trade-offs, but I think that the trade-offs that we make with Tailwind are better.
Just to clarify, when you say emotion, do you mean like their CSS package or their styled components package?
Both, but I typically prefer the CSS prop. Yeah, like this, except I don't use the CSS as a string. I actually prefer CSS as an object. But yeah, I use them both. In the Bookshelf app, we use them both. So if we go to an authenticated app file here, you'll see we're rendering an input. That's a styled component, but we're also using the CSS prop. So I only really ever make a styled component for a like something that I need to reuse. It's like part of my component library. And then I do everything else just with the CSS prop. And it works great. Like there's nothing wrong with this approach. And if people prefer it, then they can continue to use it. I just think that I'd rather teach people Tailwind because I think they'll be a little bit better off. And so that's why eventually the plan is to make that switch. So cool. Okay, fun stuff.
Can you use JavaScript and Tailwind?
Sorry, say that again.
Can you use JavaScript and Tailwind?
So Tailwind is a like it outputs CSS files. So no, but you can condition.
I might have come in the middle. If you've already talked about this, I apologize.
No, that's okay. Yeah, so Tailwind, like its final output is a CSS file with a bunch of class names. And so you can conditionally add class names to have like to connect your components logic with the way that this thing is styled. But yeah, it doesn't have any JavaScript. There is Tailwind UI though, which I believe does have components that have JavaScript.
You don't have any need for CSS and JS?
Sorry, you're really quiet, Steve. Could you say that again?
Any need for CSS and JS?
No, they are not CSS and JS. However, there is Twin macro.
What I'm saying is, don't you ever find you need or you want the convenience of being able to use CSS or JavaScript with your CSS?
Yeah, I miss it a little bit, but not a ton. There are a handful of situations where it's useful, but especially with CSS variables now, like or custom properties, it is that is less of an important thing for me as well. So
and you use function in CSS now? Function?
No. I mean, you have the calc function, but yeah, like CSS is still pretty much not a programming language technically.
So say you wanted to do a switch statement. Could you do that in CSS with CSS variables? No, you can do that. Like you had like if you wanted to have like a color, have 3 different options based on 3 different props or something. Like you can do with CSS and JS. You can't do that with Tailwind.
No. I mean, the use case is possible. You just don't use CSS by itself to do that sort of thing. So you would set up the possible values in CSS. So you say if like a common thing to do is to add like a I wanted add attribute like a data danger or let's see, disabled or something like that, or a data maybe status is disabled. And so then you would have in your CSS, and maybe there are various statuses like disabled or enabled or other statuses. So then you'd have in your CSS a selector for that, just an attribute selector, and then you'd say what styles apply for each one of these different statuses. And then you'd use JavaScript to update what that status is, and then the CSS would apply. That's a relatively common pattern for that sort of thing. So it's possible. It's just not you do it differently, and they all come with their own sets of trade-offs. Yeah, if you want to have a combination, though, I hear really great things about Twin macro, which allows you to do lots of the same things. It's like emotion plus Tailwind. A lot of people seem to, or people that I know and respect and know who are like have a good head on their shoulders are using Twin.
Okay, since we're on the topic of CSS, do you have any opinions on CSS Houdini, or do you know anything about that?
Sorry, what CSS what?
Houdini.
Houdini. I haven't explored it at all. It sounds interesting, and like smart people I know say it's going to be mind-blowingly awesome, But CSS is like, that's not the area of the world that I spend a lot of time in. I mostly like the logic side of JavaScript and you know, application architecture and state management and stuff like that. The CSS side is something that I mostly endure.
I got you.
And would you recommend using Tailwind for a group of developers? I mean, right now to migrate a solution from, let's say, CSS or Sass to Tailwind?
Yes, I would totally, especially for a group of developers, because and Tailwind narrows the scope of the things that you can do, which will increase the consistency of your UI. In like on so many teams that I've been on, we all just like throw these random like, oh, I don't know, 6 pixels looks fine right there. And even with designers too, if you have multiple designers, they're having consistency with them is difficult as well. And so when you have something like Tailwind, you can say, well, the designer said it was 6 pixels, but we don't have a 6 pixel thing. So I'll choose the what's the word I'm looking for? The like margin that is closest to what they said. But now it's consistent with everything else. So it's not just like random numbers that you throw around. So yeah, with a team of developers, Tailwind for sure. It's awesome.
Could you talk more about, because I mean, like your decision to, could you talk more about your decision to switch to teaching Tailwind a little bit more, just because in terms of readability, you know, for looking back on projects, it heavily pollutes the HTML, or in my opinion, it feels like Tailwind is heavily polluting some of the HTML that you're writing, you know, on a page.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, like at some point these classes get to be pretty long, and there are tools that will like sort the classes themselves and everything, but after a while you get to this point where like most of your component is just class names. But what I find is that actually doesn't happen a ton, because you're typically going to be saying like, so let's say that you have a form and you want the inputs to all be consistent. Well, you're not going to copy and paste the class names for all of those inputs. Like, who's going to do that? Nobody. Don't do that. So you're going to do one of two things. You can extract those class names into a variable and then apply them as needed. And so when you do that, you can get that out of the JSX, and so it doesn't pollute it as much. Or probably better, you extract that into a component that you then render. And so then the component has all of the class names applied and whatever, and then your JSX actually just you're rendering a component and it looks fine. So I mean, if we're going to compare this to something like emotion with the CSS prop, you have the exact same problem, and in fact emotion might even be a little bit worse, maybe, because with a CSS prop you put a ton of like styling related stuff in your JSX right there. That never really bothered me, but I know it bothered a lot of people to have the styles in there. Personally, I don't feel like a component is a component unless it has the markup, the logic, and the way it looks, right? Those are the three things that a component or a thing that you render to the screen needs. And so yeah, it never really bothered me to have the CSS or the styling related information embedded in there. But in practice, you don't like, only sometimes will you have a bunch of class names on the stuff that you're building, because really often you're going to extract that into components anyway. Not all the time, but it never bothers me. I don't know. It bothers some people, but I don't think looking at something like this, I just don't see that as making things complicated. There's a difference between a lot of code and a lot of complexity. Like complexity does not necessarily grow with the number of lines of code or the numbers of characters typed. Those two things are correlated, but not like one does not cause the other. So Tailwind is what I would say is pretty simple. It doesn't really make your code any more complex. I don't see it as a maintainability issue at all. It mostly comes down to a familiarity thing. So once you get used to Tailwind and the class names, then you see, class name equals this big long string, and in your mind, you're just like, oh, okay, boom, I just skip that. Here's the styles, and then you move on to whatever else you need to look at. So yeah, it just never bothers me.
Gotcha. Yeah, thanks. Just it's not new, but I'm just not as eager to adopt it, I guess, as like everyone else.
I know this is a very common complaint. You're not alone for sure. So, okay, cool. Any other? We get on CSS and we just talk forever about all the trade-offs and stuff. Okay, so we've got another question here. And this is in the testing React apps on Epic React Dev, just for some context there. I'm curious about how you would change context value in between tests. Oh yeah, okay. So let's say that you've got this context value and you're testing some consumer of that context value, and you want to test what happens when that context value changes and the consumer re-renders. I think that's what they're talking about. So here we've got an auth context, and yeah, we've got our is authenticated and set is authenticated. And I think, yeah, it's just the app or header test here. Let's take a look at this one. I haven't looked at this yet, so I'm not, we're seeing this together. So we have this mock auth context because we are mocking the auth context. When you do jest.mock like this, it just will look at all of the exports of that module. It'll find all the functions and it will replace those with mock functions. So that's, yeah. Okay, well, so that's what happens. But right here, we're getting them, we're creating a mock auth context as a jest function, and then we're mocking its implementation. That will do nothing because you're just interacting with this function. It has nothing to do with the use auth hook or anything like that. So yeah, just because you're saying that this mock function is the same type doesn't mean that our header is going to use that. And that's probably why things aren't working for you. So what you want to do is, because you say just.mock auth context, this use auth is going to be a mock function. And I don't know if we'll be able to reliably get that in here, but that's what it is. So here, let's just console log. Oh, actually, no, we can't get that in here because Code Sandbox doesn't support jest.mock, which is a total bummer. But I'll just explain it here really quick. Yeah, right here, jest.mock is not a function because it's not supported in Code Sandbox. But I'll just explain it. So use auth is going to be a mock function. So you can actually just say that, and now this mocked auth context variable is going to be use auth, which is a mocked function. So you can mock its implementation, and yeah, and then you can test the logged in and logged out version. Of course, like I said, this isn't going to work in Code Sandbox, but this should actually work locally. So give that a shot. And if you want to dive deeper into jest mocks and stuff like that, then I get into that pretty deep in testingjavascript.com in the JavaScript mocking fundamentals workshop, where you actually build these functions and stuff. It's pretty cool. So yeah, hopefully that is helpful. Good luck.
But Kent, in regards to that mock function, sorry, you did something different in the Bookshelf app, and is that not sort of mocking implementation details, or?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what this person's wanting to do is see what happens to their component when the user is authenticated, when they're not, and you can accomplish that with a mock function. You'd probably be better off though taking a few steps further back and not bothering mocking at all, and instead setting up the environment to make it so that that provider behaves in that way. And so, yeah, in the Bookshelf app, I do this quite a bit. In fact, I'll just show that. I come back to this file all the time, the app test utils, but it's built into the custom render for the Bookshelf app. So here, I accept a user, so you can log in or be logged in as a specific user. If you set that to undefined, then you will not be logged in. So that's how I control log in or log out. Or actually, sorry, no, if you set that to null, then you won't be logged in. But yeah, so this login as user is, it takes, the user properties. We interact with our mock database. That's where the mock comes in, is this fake database that our MSW suite of server handlers interacts with, so that when we render our application with the app providers, our auth context is part of those app providers there. And so when you render it, the auth context is actually going to make that request, and then MSW will intercept that request, and it will interact with our user's database to go check if the user is currently logged in, which it would be. So yeah, that would be a better way to do this, rather than mocking a bunch of stuff. I don't mock very often. It's not a really super common thing for me to do. I mostly intercept requests. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Tiger. I got so involved in like, here, let's solve this specific problem that I forgot, like, hold on a second. Maybe you don't need to, maybe the problem is the problem.
The more we mock, the less confidence.
Yeah, exactly. You're making, it's all trade-offs too. But yeah, I tend to agree with you there. Okay, Nikhil is asking, I haven't seen this at all. So this is in Test React Components, which is part of testingjavascript.com. Oh, I think there's some more context here. No. Okay, so to answer your first question here, I think there's got to be a reason that JSDOM adds visible style to all nodes by default. Yeah, that seems weird. But I have contributed to JSDOM, but I have not done much in there. So yeah, I can't really answer this question of whether that's a bug. That seems like a bug to me, but I'm guessing there's a reason they do it. I don't know. That'd be something to open up in their issue tracker and ask them. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know about this either. So I haven't done anything with the jest matchers since we pulled them out of React testing library into their own package. And so, yeah, I can't answer that question either. Sorry. It's not exactly entirely helpful, but I would just open an issue on those with the research that you did. And I'm sure they would appreciate any help that you can offer. Okay, so Josh asked this, and I invited Josh to put this here. So this is part of the, I think it's the advanced hooks, pretty sure, or maybe it's performance. I can't remember. Let me see. Yes, right here. So this is part of the performance workshop in extra credit 3 of the cache resources. So let me just pull that up. So we come down to, wait a second. Yeah, maybe this is, I didn't, let's see, advanced React hooks, maybe. It might actually be suspense. Yeah, React suspense. Okay, cache resources. Here we go. Final extra credit 3. So in here, I can go to Pikachu, and it takes a second. Then I go to Charizard, and it takes a second. Then I go back to Pikachu, and add. Oh, because the cache timed out. So if I go a little faster, then yeah. Now we stay within the timeout, and we can keep going back and forth between these two. And so Josh had said, but if, and then we wait, I think it's 5 seconds is the timeout. So then if I wait 5 seconds and then go, now it's going to have to load again. And actually you'll notice when we do this, if you take a look at the time right here, you'll see when the fetch time was. And if we wait for the timeout to finish, you'll see that Pikachu has a 999 at the end. So then if I go to Charizard, we wait for the 5 seconds, and then go back to Pikachu, then it takes a second to load, and the load time is different. So we are actually caching the result of these things. So that's what the exercise is about. And Josh is like the way I implemented it is a little bit tricky. I should really have a link to the GitHub repo for each one of these. That would be nice. Let's see, this is React suspense. And that's exercise 4. Extra credit 3. So yeah, this is how that was implemented between these two things. So this is our Pokemon cache provider. And so when we say get Pokemon resource, we're going to check our cache, which is just a ref here. And if that resource does not exist in the cache, then we're going to create a new one. And then we'll put that resource into the cache. And then we also are storing these expirations in a separate ref. And we say when we expect this to expire. And then we have this use effect that is just a interval. And on an interval of 1 second, so every second, we go through all of the expirations. And we say if that, man, this is something weird's going on. If that time is less than the current time, then we're going to delete this from the cache. So what Josh had suggested is, well, maybe instead of doing that, you can make it a lot simpler by just when we say get Pokemon resource, we're going to add a set timeout to have it be removed from the cache at after that cache time, however long that cache time would be. So while this may appear to work, if you were to try and hopefully you still have this code so you can try this out, but if you do this, what I was doing, then you'll notice that after a while, there is going to be a time where you need to fetch the new stuff. So you won't be able to do this at all. This won't work for you because after a couple of seconds, you'll have to go and do another fetch. And let me explain why that is. So what happens here is you have no way to say, oh, never mind. I don't want to clear this from the cache. That's what's going on. So every time I click on this, we're going to call this use callback thing. And we're going to set a new timeout on every single one of these. That's going to clear the cache. So we're constantly clearing the cache. And there's no way for us to say, oh, actually, never mind. We don't want to clear the cache. We don't want to reset the timeout or whatever, because we kind of fire and forget this timeout. And so we say, okay, get me this resource. And in 5 seconds, we're going to get rid of it, even if I request it again between now and then. And so that's why I implemented it the way that I did, because I can say, go get me this resource. And this is when this should expire. And then through here, we say after that certain amount of time, if it should expire now, then let's have it expired. But the difference comes in where if I say, hey, get me that resource again, then it's going to say, okay, yeah, oh, that actually happens to be in the cache, and I'm going to update the expiration time. And so there's only one source of truth for all the expiration times, and we can update it to be 10 seconds or 5 seconds or whatever the cache time was past the last time this was accessed. And so that's the trade-off. That's the difference. And that's why this is a little more complicated. This might be a good thing to add in the notes if I didn't already try to explain it. And if I did, then maybe, yeah, I should probably, yeah, there are several ways to do this. All of them come with trade-offs. Yeah, I think I added that because I knew lots of people were going to do it the same way I did it the first time, actually. But I should probably add a note in here. Somebody can to explain, like, let's see. Yeah. So like, it would be cool to add a little note in here that says, make sure that your implementation allows me to access a Pokemon again and have the clock reset or something like that. Anyway, that's why it was implemented the way that it is. Okay, cool. We got to move on. Oh my goodness, it's almost 10:30. Holy cow. Let's see if I can get some more answers down here really quick.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, for real. Okay, so Anja is asking, do you have an example project with React Query and context? Yeah, the Bookshelf app. Thanks, Tiger. And Anja, you're going to help us build it when you get to that part of Epic React. So that'll be fun. Okay. Yeah, and those are good. I've heard of Launch Darkly as well. I can't remember who told me about that, but they seem to, whoever told me about it seemed to really like it. When is the TS course stuff coming out? I will make no promises at all. I have no idea. It is not number one on my priority list, though. I'm not sure if I'm prepared to tell you what is, because I kind of want that to be a surprise. But I'll be giving you some spoilers later. It's not a course, but it is going to be awesome. Yeah, sometime this year, probably. Okay, yeah, so failed to load chunk error. That doesn't happen very often, but that can happen. Error boundaries are the way that you handle those kinds of errors. You can do like a retry. I wonder if Webpack has a way to retry. Webpack retry chunks. Yeah, so there's a plugin for this.
Okay, that would be nice. I'm here.
Yeah,
I'm here to on the voice.
Yeah. I would definitely try a plugin like this before I tried to manually do this. Yeah, bust cache.
That makes a lot more sense, actually.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe this will work for you, maybe not. But yeah, it's not super common. I don't see this a lot, but it definitely can happen, and error boundaries can catch that for you. Assuming that what you're trying to lazy load is a React component. If you're doing react.lazy import, yeah. So then an error boundary will catch that, and you can say, click this button to try again or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Twinned. Yes, this was
much.
the other one I was trying to think of earlier. This is like twin macro. Twinned. I also hear good things about this from smart people, so you can take a look at that. It's kind of interesting. And okay, yeah. So why do I prefer this? I actually can tell you. If you
I did answer Ibra with your blog post again. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Tiger. Very good.
No worries.
Perfect. Yenj. Okay, cool. Nice. That's Yenj. Wow, that is I never would have gotten that. So thank you for telling me how to pronounce it. Question about downshift. So before I go in and talk about this, I've not developed downshift for years. It's been a long time. I handed that off. So I may not be able to answer your question, NJ, but I'll try. We have to add a drop down with a button and a link. Okay. Yep. Yeah, that downshift may not be the right solution for you. It can do this, but there may be no, it's probably okay, actually. using uSelect. So I didn't write any of the uSelect code. When I was working on downshift, it was all render props. It's the main downshift component. Yeah, so uSelect is probably what I would use. I'm not saying don't use that. It's just I might not be able to answer your question. I'm getting nervous. Okay. The thing that's not working for me is when I press the enter key, the highlighted element does not receive a click event because the focus is on the dropdown container. Yep, rather than the highlighted element. Yep, that makes sense. Managed to make it work. Yep, it works. Yeah, so when you hit enter, that's supposed to select whatever you have highlighted. But it doesn't trigger any events on that element. What I would probably do, I mean, what you have there is a little bit hacky. You'd want to have a comment explaining exactly why you're doing it that way, but I wouldn't say that it's unlikely that that would break. I think it is probably fine. Yeah, what would I do? I don't know. This seems okay. It's not exactly what downshift was built for. Downshift is really like, I have an input, I have a list of options, I choose one of those, and that fills in what the input says. So you're, the reason that you're running into this weird thing is because you're using downshift for to do something that it's not exactly intended for. And so yeah, but it checks all the boxes on accessibility and keyboard nav and everything. So I understand why you want to use it for this. I'm trying to think if it would make sense to open an issue and suggest that this be something that's built in, and this is probably how they might do it. But I can imagine that like adding this like special code to handle this sort of use case would not be desirable, especially since the implementation that you have here is actually works out pretty well. Yeah, and like you can get the highlighted element. Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. This seems fine. It's the way I determine whether something's okay to do a hack sort of thing like this is whether I can foresee this breaking unexpectedly, and I don't really see this breaking. Like even if you were to switch and like throw this into a portal or anything like that, like this would still work. Yeah, so I think this is fine. Just add a comment that explains why you're doing this. And all that comment needs to say is downshift does not fire events on this selected items because they're called items. So it doesn't fire events on the selected item when selected with the enter key. Yeah, that's all I would do, and then this code is fine. Good job. Okay, sweet. Yeah, so to answer this question, okay.
You actually answered this question. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Good. Thank you, Harsh, for asking that question so I could answer this. Okay, sweet. Thank you, Tiger. You've been really helpful. Preferred way to structure files in React apps. Oh man, every time I see this question, I have to try and remember. Yeah, file structure. Ah, man, I can't remember. So Dan Abramoff made a little surge.
Yeah, that changed though ever since hooks. Like, there used to be like a thing where you had like a container or structure where that was like changed after hooks. He said he didn't recommend that way anymore.
Okay, so I never recommended. Well, very, very early days AngularJS, I would say, okay, here's my controllers, here's my services, here's my directives. It didn't take long for the AngularJS community to realize that was a really bad idea, and instead structure things by feature Yeah, there it is. React file structure .search.sh. Move files around until it feels right. This is not a joke. Yes. Yeah. So that's what I kind of subscribe to as well.
Okay. Yeah. That's an updated post. Obviously, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of funny. But like seriously, that's kind of how I feel about it too. Now, I hesitate to show you this, but Ryan Florence has a gist. Let's see, file structure. Yeah, here we go. Oh, no, that's not it. That was just my history. I may have deleted my bookmark for the gist, but kind of laid out sort of a file structure. But honestly, you should probably be using a framework that that has a file like the file system routing, and so that comes with a recommended file structure anyway. So Next.js, for example, and Remix is the same. And so, yeah, sorry, what?
I've only used Create React App. I've never found a reason to use Next.js, and Remix. I'm still kind of curious about.
Yeah, it's still early. Yeah, totally. So what I always did before, like when it was all just client side stuff with Create React App, or even before that when I was doing my own hand rolled Webpack stuff, is I like to have, and actually the Bookshelf app does this pretty well because it is a Create React App application, but I would have a screens directory, and this would map to all of the, like to my routes. So it would almost be like a directory structure that maps to the routes, kind of like you would find in Next, or this would be like the pages directory in Gatsby, or is that what it's called? Now I can't even remember. Yeah, I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, and then, I know what you mean by the way they do. You just put all your files in the pages folder and it automatically creates a link.
Yeah, exactly. So I do basically the same thing, and the only extra step that you have to worry about is here it is wiring things up with the router yourself. But other than that, like it's pretty much I just follow like have my file structure follow the route structure, and then the way that I typically do things, like in a bigger app, you're going to have like components that are needed by just one of these things, or actually often when I just have a component that is only needed for a single screen, I'm just going to stick it directly in that file. Like here's the notes text area. It's only needed by this book screen. The list item time frame is only needed by the book screen. So I just stick it in the file. But if it's a shared component across multiple multiple screens, then I'm going to find the least common directory between those two screens, and I'll have a components directory in there. And then I'll just import it from that. And because this app is kind of small, that least common directory is the source directory. And so that's where all these components end up. And then I have the utils directory for like hooks and non-component utilities. Yeah, and then you have your assets. I don't know. I'm pretty happy with the way that this is structured. So if you wanted to pattern it after the Bookshelf app, I think that you'd be pretty well off.
Okay, since you brought up routing and Next.js and Remix, I have a question, because this is what I was kind of curious about. Like if I have a login page that I want to have be accessible, and like if you click on one link, it brings up the, if you're already a user, you're just signing back in. But if you click on a link, it switches the format to be you're a new user. So that would be like a sign-in link. And then if you clicked on the link and it switched out the form, then it would be like a login or like create account link. How would you do that in Next.js? It would still be one page. So you would still have to use React Router if you wanted to have links on that one form, correct? Am I making sense?
So what you want is like a login and a register, or do you want just login?
You have a form that it's basically one form that switches. If you click a link and if you're a new user, it switches out to create new user. And if you're a repeat user, you click the button and it switches out the same form, but you're logging in.
Yeah. And do you want the URL to update when
I
they
want
do
there to be a sign in or a create account. So if they click on the link that's create account, it'll still be, it'll be like two different links. Like if you wanted to send a link to the login, you would have a link to the login, a hard link to login, and you wanted a link to the create account. And that's just an example. But there could be other.
So you wouldn't need to do client-side routing for that at all. Well, I mean, Next.js does client-side routing, but like you just have with the way that Next.js is structured, you'd have your pages directory, and you'd have a create account .js and a login.js, and they would both render the same form, but so you'd take that form component, you'd put it in a components directory or whatever, and then you'd import it and you'd render it, and you'd say this one, the button should say login, and this one, the button should say sign up or whatever. So there's no limitation there.
How would you create a hard link to that though? How would you create a URL to that link?
That's what I'm saying is like the way that the Next is structured is you just stick files in the pages directory, and those become those are your routes. The files
so
are your routes.
Every hyperlink on that page, it becomes so basically it wouldn't be like like the name of the site / sign in, and the name of it would what I'm confused. I don't follow you. If you wanted to have one page, like you have a login page that has a form that could switch from sign in to create account, but it's one page.
Well, why would you need it to be one page? Why does it need to be one page?
Because that's the way I like the UI setup. So you don't have to have two forms.
Well, okay, but
I can show you an example. If you go
hold it. Just because they are on different pages doesn't mean those two pages can't render the same thing.
They're not on different pages. They're on the same page.
Right. What I'm saying is just because those are in separate files doesn't mean they can't render the same thing. And so in Next, if you wanted to have two URLs that render the exact same thing, you would make two files that render the exact same thing.
I want two different URLs.
So two files.
Like a different state of the form. If you're logging in the first time, it would be a link to yada.com / create account. And if you're logging back in, if you're already a user, it would be yada.com / sign in, not create account. But it would be the same form on the same page. So that so how would you have two different URLs to those those links if it's only on one page? If it's like, am I making sense at all?
I'm struggling to understand why you're confused. So here's what I'm going to do.
I'll give you a link to exactly what I'm talking about.
I understand what you're talking about. So here's what I'm going to do, because we're out of time for my office hours anyway. I want you to try spinning up a Next app, just like the simplest Next app that you can, and try to do the thing that you're trying to do. And if you run into a wall, then bring it over to Discord, and I'm pretty sure we'll have plenty of people who are happy to help you get from A to B. And if nobody is, then you can bring that same app to me on Next office hours.
All right.
Does that sound okay?
Perfect.
Okay, cool. Okay, I gotta run. I think Iago, you shared something. I don't think that I have time to. Oh no, that was on a different thing. I don't know if I have time to take a look at this right now, but as we wrap up, we'll just see you all next week, same time, same place. It's gonna be fun. Hope that you're all doing awesome, and we will see you all